Hey everybody. Okay, so as we've learned today, tech employees are not always technical. Um, I actually cannot see the Q&A anymore, so I'm going to ask you not to post questions in the Q&A. What I am going to have you do is, if you have any questions, you can ping them to me. I am online right now, and the G chat is going to be briphi@google.com. So hang on, let me just make sure I am logged into that. Okay. Yes. So Audra, or if somebody else wants to ping me and just let me know that you guys are getting my broadcast, that would be extremely helpful. I also can't see any of you guys. So I guess let me just clarify that you guys can see me. Let's see. Hmm. Well, let's see. If you guys open up the chat, it should be on the left-hand side. It's like a blue chat messenger. We should be able to communicate that way. Maybe not. All right. Brief intermission. Here, you guys can look at my intro slide while I get this sorted out. Okay, so I have confirmation that we're live. Let me go back to me. All right, guys. Sorry about all the confusion. My name is Brian Phillips. I work with Google as part of their leadership, research, and strategy group. I'm pretty much going to jump straight to the slides. We're a little bit behind. So as I said, you guys can ping me over GChat with questions, or you can get them to Audra or Leah, and they can send them to me. I've got a couple of places in the presentation kind of built in for your questions. So you can hold questions till the end if you think I'm headed towards answering them, but I tend to ramble on. So feel free to interrupt me anytime you need to. I'm going to go to the presentation and dive right in. All right. So your philosophy degree and careers in tech. I've got my LinkedIn here. It's linkedin.com/in/Brian D. Phillips. Feel free to connect with me. You can shoot me a message on LinkedIn, or I'll throw my email in at the end. If you have any follow-up questions, or if you think that you'd like to chat a little more about anything we talked about today, feel free to reach out. So a little disclaimer here. The following represents my opinions and advice, not that of Google, Google People Operations, which is our human resources department, or any other Google employee. For questions related to Google's stance on any topic, they ask that I refer you to press@google.com. And for any information on Google's hiring processes, qualifications for general Google employees or job opportunities, you can check out the job site. It's google.com/jobs. The agenda for today, we're a little late, so that shouldn't be a problem. I tend to speed talk through things anyway. First of all, I'm going to do a brief introduction, who I am, how I got to where I am today, and kind of what my qualifications are. We're going to talk a little bit about why I think you're here, hopefully. If I'm totally wrong, there'll be an opportunity for you to tell me that and give some feedback as to things you'd like me to kind of throw into the presentation. And then there's three broad topics I want to touch on. The first is specifically framing your skill set for the tech sector, how the tech sector differs from other industries. The second is how to prove potential for success in the new career based on either your education or your prior experience. And then finally, independent contracting or small business ownership. You know, if you're hoping to go into business for yourself, what's your value add going to be based on your philosophy degree, and how is that gonna get you business over your competitor or other independent contractors? So about me, again, Brian Phillips. I'm working with Google now. I left Google off of here. I kind of want to focus on what got me to the tech sector. I mean, it'd be pretty easy to explain how my current position at Google might help me get my next job in tech, but prior to this, I had no experience in tech. I have a bachelor's degree in molecular and cell biology from Cornell University. And then following my degree, I was a caseworker with a healthcare nonprofit for about 2 years. That consisted of working with families of primarily disabled children, although there were some adults. And I also worked with New York State Medicaid. I functioned as kind of the go-between between Medicaid and these families when equipment or services that they required for their treatment were being denied by New York State Medicaid. I did that, like I said, for about 2 years, and then got pretty sick of fighting for every approval and every penny. It was really kind of an emotionally exhausting job. So I quit my job. I moved to New York City, and I had what I thought would last me about 6 months. It turned out to last me about 2 months. And so I started temping and doing some contract work. In general, I highly recommend temping and contract work as a way to kind of get your foot in the door. That's not really covered in depth in this presentation, but if you have questions about how to use contract work to establish yourself in the field, definitely reach out. In New York, I landed a job as an account executive with a PR services firm. I was essentially wining and dining financial services trade publication editors and kind of keeping my finger on the pulse of who was who in the financial trade publication world. It was a very small company. It was a startup, and so I learned a lot very quickly, but it wasn't really fulfilling at all. So when I got a call from an executive search firm asking me if I was interested in working with them as a research associate in financial services, I jumped at the opportunity and I took it. I worked there for about a year, and then Google called me and asked if I would be interested in doing similar work for them. So now today, my team at Google functions to support open leadership positions, working with hiring managers on finding innovative talent at the leadership level and screening them and working with our executive leaders on how to bring them into the company. We also do strategy and research surrounding our long-term hiring goals for leadership positions. And just some personal interests and activities that I've worked into interviews and various job getting techniques. I was an SAT math tutor for low-income high school students for a long time. Tutoring and teaching has always been something that I've really enjoyed. I was a member of Cornell's Holocaust and Genocide Awareness Group. We did a lot of activities surrounding either fundraising or raising awareness surrounding genocide, particularly in Africa, but all over the world. And just as kind of a fun note, in New York, I was doing a lot of distance riding as a team, century rides, and so on and so forth. So there's a common thread here across all of this background that you'll notice, and that is I do not have a philosophy background. So I'm hoping that you'll probably teach me as much about philosophy and its applications in the tech world as you see them, as I can offer expertise from kind of the talent management background. So why you're here? Well, I am guessing that some broad reasons that might have brought you here are either interest in learning and development as a career following your degree, or maybe you previously worked in tech and you're hoping to reframe your career through this degree, maybe pivot into a new function within the tech world or outside of the tech world. Or maybe you're starting a business and you're hoping that tech companies will be either clients or you'll be doing some independent contracting for tech companies. So what we're going to cover today is in terms of interest in learning and development as a new career, how can you frame your skills and your experience and the education you've gained so far specifically for the tech sector? Coming here from New York, which was dominated by finance and advertising and consulting, I can say with pretty much, I would say, certainty that the tech sector is very different, and it values different things, and it focuses on different skills. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how to frame yourself for the tech sector. Then we're gonna look at what you can say and how you can frame your past experience in a tech-related role for a pivot into another role. Maybe what wasn't working about that position and what you're hoping to gain from this philosophy degree that you believe sets you up for success in a new role, whether that's in tech or outside of tech. And then finally, how does your education represent a value add as compared to people who are either independent contractors or own their own small businesses who lack this philosophy degree? So I'm going to say each one of these sections is a couple of minutes long, and there's kind of a break in between each one with some questions for you guys. That's going to be a little harder for me to handle given I can't see or hear you guys, and the Q&A doesn't seem to be working for me. But again, feel free to ping me. You can Gchat me at briphi@google.com. You can also reach me at bdphillips28@gmail.com. And you can pass questions to Audra or Leah. I know they've both pinged me, so they're at least capable of getting in touch with me. And I'll check those as we go through. So for this first section, what I'm really looking for is if I missed anything on the previous slides in terms of kind of what brought you here and what you're hoping to get. Feel free to let me know. I can kind of ad-lib and try to throw in some coverage of issues or topics that you think I missed. And any glaring omissions, anything you're hoping to get out of this session or that you were told would be involved in this session that you don't think I'm going to cover, feel free to reach out and let me know. So I'm going to jump right into the first section, for interest in learning and development, or broad kind of talent development as a career, how can you frame your skills specifically for the tech sector? I think one of the big things I learned initially upon kind of starting at Google and arriving in San Francisco is companies in the tech sector, small startups or large companies, they operate in a different manner than other organizations that at least I've dealt with in the past. And this is not to say that just, it's not just the cargo shorts and the flip-flops and the ponytails. They focus on different fundamentals, and one of those is an engineering foundation. I can speak at least for my experience, and also for a lot of friends' experiences who do not work in engineering roles, that we've been a little surprised at how focused on the engineering tech companies tend to be. They're very data-driven employees. They're looking for very logical problem-solving and creative thinking skills. And there's really, I say an intelligence culture. I hesitate to use the word nerd, but I mean, I always thought that I was a nerd. But I see people, every day playing Dungeons and Dragons at lunch and talking about their favorite, anime cartoons with each other. And it's really just a very open, collaborative environment where your personal interests and your personal characteristics are encouraged to be put at the front of who you are and who you bring to work. The startup mentality, I think, is something that was new to me. They drill into you in the interview process for most tech companies that you're going to need to be comfortable with ambiguity and constant change. You're really going to have to be a self-starter. There's not going to be somebody kind of telling you what you can and can't do. And finally, they're highly culture-driven. They really work hard to emphasize their missions and drive that down throughout the organization. And so they're going to value people who are innately curious, intellectually curious, looking to learn new things, and work together with people who are trying to achieve the same goal. So how can you kind of craft your previous experiences to this kind of engineering startup collaborative culture? What we have here on the left is bullet style my background prior to Google. And based on kind of the industry needs, I was able to take some of these background characteristics and skills that may not necessarily have been indicative of a traditional tech employee and craft them into a story that ultimately framed me as the type of person that they wanted on their team. So just some quick examples. In terms of the engineering culture, I have a biological sciences degree, and I did a lot of math and statistics. I was initially pre-med, and I took a lot of calculus, and I took a lot of advanced statistics courses. And so I really tried to play this up in my cover letters, in my interviewing, in my talking to people, just my love for numbers and kind of my quantitative skills. I also did 3 years of research that was focused on producing quality data that my mentors and the PhD students I was working underneath could turn into a publishable piece of research. And so I tried to push that as well. The startup mentality, ambiguity, comfortable with just like a lack of direction and being told to just run full tilt at a problem. The PR services firm that I worked at in New York was 15 people when I started. They were actually about 45 by the time I left. But this allowed me to lead a small team. This allowed me to jump in and tackle problems outside of my area of expertise. I became the default IT person who was responsible for everything from software purchasing to setting up new computers. That's that's kind of a non-traditional previous role for somebody at Google, but I think I was successful in spinning it into something that provided me with the necessary skills and experience that that they were looking for. And finally, the culture-driven, mission-oriented piece. Again, this PR services firm was extremely collaborative. When you put 15 people in a room, an open floor plan office, and tell them that, you know, these are their goals and these are their quarterly goals, it really encourages people to work together, and it encourages people to jump in and solve problems that are outside of their scope of knowledge. And that ultimately proved to be valuable in the tech sector as well. So with that, I guess the goal here, in my opinion, is if you're looking to get into tech, even in a non-tech role, it's really crucial that by the time you're writing your cover letters and interviewing for tech positions and out there networking, you should be fairly comfortable going through your entire resume, your entire background, and applying the lens of these attributes that we've talked about to your background. And so, you know, if you have skills or experiences in your past that you think either would be difficult to frame, I would beg to differ. I think that, you know, working together, we could probably, we could figure out how best to frame some pretty random and interesting backgrounds into these types of skills. If you have specific examples that you're curious about, feel free to ping me. Let me just check my chat here. Okay. So yeah, if you guys have, if there's a specific example, somebody's saying, you know, there's no way I can turn my time doing human resources for the zoo into something that's valuable to a tech company, definitely reach out to me. I would be happy to chat with you a little bit about that. Moving on, part two, kind of thinking about reframing your career through a degree. I think it's going to be important, the piece of this that is identifying what was not working for you previously and what led to this this pivot for you is going to be crucial in framing how you plan to move forward. You're likely moving into a new field, or at least a new kind of focus area, and you may not have the experience that demonstrates success in that area. And so being able to be honest with yourself, identify what didn't work before, and frame things moving forward in such a way that you can set yourself up as somebody who is high potential for success is going to be crucial. Proving potential for success in a new career. At Google, we have a term. I believe it's an industry term. I would be surprised if it was just a Google term, but we call them general athletes. Companies at this point have identified that, you know, if you have a broad set of desirable qualifications, regardless of the role, you can probably be trained to do the role-specific tasks fairly easily. And so some widely applicable qualifications that you should be thinking about demonstrating are leadership skills. Right out of the gate, everybody wants leadership skills. Leadership can be demonstrated in a number of ways. It doesn't have to be leading a team. You know, I did lead a small team. However, it was only about 4 people, and it was for a very short period of time. And so when moving to Google, the way that I demonstrated leadership outside of this very small 4-person leadership role was through my cycling. I talked a lot in my interviews and with my recruiter about how, you know, large team cycling events involved a lot of, especially in New York, involved a lot of somebody taking the lead, taking the front of the pack, and signaling intersections, signaling, you know, garbage trucks pulling out of alleys. And we rotated this responsibility. Everybody was able to do it. And I think that's not a traditional example of scaling a team or leading, 500 employees, but it's definitely leadership broadly, and it demonstrates just the bare essentials of having some leadership that they then can gain some confidence that they'll be able to build more of that in you. And so I think, think outside the box on this one. If you haven't directly led a team, I would argue that you can definitely pull some instances of strong leadership from pretty much every background. And second, widely applicable qualification, problem solving and critical thinking. Most tech companies are going to be putting you through at least some round of case study interview questions where they're going to give you a very open-ended question. You're tasked with designing the leadership and development program for our new EMEA offices. How would you go about doing this? And for these types of questions and to demonstrate these types of skills, I think how you approach problems and showing that you can approach problems in a very logical progression, working linearly through a problem, is going to be key. And ultimately, I think a philosophy degree is probably very closely tied to this type of thinking. The other piece of this is not being afraid to ask questions. That they're asking these questions and they're probing these types of critical thinking skills, hoping that you're going to be able to get out of them the additional information you need to answer these questions. And so, this is a skill that, while I think your degree is probably suited well to, it's also something that you can probably find examples of in most of your previous work, whether it was project management or projects that you took on by yourself. I mean, just laying out the process of how you're going to get from point A to point B, going about gathering all the necessary information to make informed decisions along the way, and showing success in actually achieving your goal is something that, if you've been in a role for more than a few months, they're keeping you around for a reason. You've probably demonstrated this type of problem solving. It's just a matter of kind of pulling it out of your experience and being able to talk about it confidently. And then finally, the last widely applicable qualification, and I think this probably extends outside of tech. However, it's even more important in small companies, is culture fit. Ultimately, I'm sure everyone's heard this before, but you're going to spend as much time with your coworkers, probably more, than you spend at home with your families. And so really being open and honest about who you are, what makes you unique, and what motivates you is going to do you a world of favor in terms of finally landing you in a position that's right for you. This is probably a great time to bring up, the unicycle juggling club you started in high school that maybe got you teased in high school. Well, now is the time to talk about that, because ultimately, you're going to find the most success at a company where you fit in and where you like the people you work with and you collaborate well with the people you work with. And so being honest with yourself about what you're looking for, and being honest enough with yourself to turn down a job where you don't think the culture fit is there is going to be important in landing yourself in a really rewarding role. And then in terms of role-specific qualifications, I think, again, an honest look at your experiences and the reasons that you went back to get this degree, why the role you're looking at is a better fit for you right now. This is going to be really important. If you can go into an interview and explain that you don't have the skills, but this is why you've gained this education, and this is why you feel this position is a better fit for where you are in your life right now, that's going to overcome a lot of lack of role-specific knowledge, especially if you have these widely applicable qualifications pulled out of your past experience and who you are, you're going to be able to overcome most of the role-specific qualifications that you don't have. The second piece of advice I would offer is if you can't demonstrate at least similar skills to those required for the job, either through your education or through your previous work history, is this really the right job? There's no benefit to you or the employer, but especially you in pushing your way through an interview process and kind of finding your way into a position that you're not qualified for and ultimately doesn't fit well with who you are and what your strengths are. And then finally, when all else fails, demonstrate your ability to learn quickly and show intellectual curiosity. A great culture fit with the ability to pick up new skills quickly will trump a skilled team member who no one wants to be around every day of the week. This goes back to the whole general athlete line of thinking. If you can demonstrate that you're intellectually curious and you're somebody that these people want to work with, and your degree has brought you to a place where you have the type of critical thinking and leadership skills that they're looking for, and you're intellectually curious, you're going to pick up new skills. Maybe you have examples of courses you took for fun or things that you learned that weren't required learning. These are gonna help frame you as the type of person who is trainable. Ultimately, you've set the bar. You've made the foundation of a teachable employee, and now you're going to be able to pick up the role-specific skills. Let me just check my pings. I know I got a message from Audra. Let's see. Yeah, so Audra has asked if I could email you guys the slides I used today, so that you can take a closer look at them. I guess they're kind of small on the YouTube presentation. I will definitely do that. What I'll do is I'll send them to Leah and Audra, and then they can distribute to people who are interested. So philosophy-specific skills. For this second part, I guess the interactive portion that is going to be tough without the Q&A, but that I'd like you to at least think a little bit about is, what are some skills or ways of approaching problems that you feel specifically your degree has taught you? Like I said, I'm not an expert in philosophy. I have a very good friend of mine who studied philosophy as an undergraduate and focused on kind of logic and logic games. And so I know that to a certain extent, most philosophy is built around elimination of assumptions and kind of looking at facts and looking at the different ways of approaching problems. So, there are definitely ways of approaching problems that you've gained through your degree that could be applicable in this new career. What that new career is might be different for each of you, whether it's a career in tech or not, whether it's a career in, the finance department of a tech company or operations or learning and development, or whether you want to be an engineer. It's important for you to think about explaining why you got this degree and what specifically this degree has done to prepare you for this type of new role. All right, and then the third section here, starting a business or looking to contract with tech companies. So I read a really interesting article either last week or the week before, and I looked for it leading up to this, and I wasn't able to pinpoint the exact source, but you can do a little searching online and find some pretty solid statistics from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and they're predicting that by 2020, at least 20% of the American workforce is going to be made up of independent contractors. Small businesses, especially tech startups, are turning to independent contractors for all types of services, whether it's advertising, whether it's social media, whether it's outsourcing of retreats or other learning and development programs. More and more, they're finding that they can kind of handpick an expert in a specific field and outsource or contract for this type of service, as opposed to bringing people in-house who are expected to do all of their different marketing roles or all of their different learning and developing roles. So I would argue that the 6 kind of bullet points here are ways that your philosophy degree would differentiate you from your competition. I guess it's kind of on you guys to think about this and frame, much better than I do what you gained from this degree and the courses you took, the specific focus areas you had. But it's going to be crucial, in addition to learning to be kind of your own business and be your own, salesperson and payroll person and deal with your own self-employment tax. Like that whole process of being an independent contractor and running your own business is a lot of work in and of itself. But your success as an independent contractor is going to be highly dependent on your ability to differentiate yourself. And I would argue that a philosophy degree is an excellent differentiator for a number of reasons. So I guess I'm going to take a minute and give you guys time to get caught up. If you have any questions that you want to ping to me, this was a good talk. It's a little disappointing that I wasn't able to see or hear you guys. I was anticipating a much more interactive session, but again, here's my name. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. This is my personal Gmail. You can always reach me there, whether I'm still at Google or moved on. I plan on keeping this address. That's the reason I used this one as opposed to my work address. But I'll give you guys just a couple of minutes to come up with any questions that you have. Otherwise, I am pretty much finished. Let's see. All right. So, question. I'd like a little more info on what all learning and development encompasses. Some examples of programs, jobs within learning and development. So, full disclosure, learning and development at Google, actually, we sit in the same department. I'm not actively working with the learning and development team right now. I do a lot of crossover projects with them, and I have worked with them in the past. Learning and development, at least at the companies that I have worked for, tends to encompass everything from well, let me start over. So human resources, you kind of have a couple of verticals within human resources. And again, this is not specific to Google. This is not actually exactly how Google does things even, but in general, you have recruitment of employees, bringing employees in. You have maintenance of your employees in terms of benefits and perks and life situations, maternity leave, paternity leave, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have learning and development, which usually would oversee everything from internal trainings. I know at Google there's a lot of courses offered by other employees. So that program would be overseen by learning and development. You've also got, in a lot of corporations, learning and development would encompass identification of talent potential within your organization and kind of who is going to be maybe fast-tracked for promotion, who is going to need certain skills developed in order to remain a valuable employee, and kind of how do you deliver those necessary trainings. In most companies, performance management and reviewing your employees on, an annual or semi-annual basis would fall under learning and development. So in terms of roles, I'm going to say there's probably a lot of kind of program manager roles where you oversee one of these types of programs. There's probably a lot of educational roles where you're actually delivering the trainings. And then there's going to be roles developing the strategy of, kind of the operations of how do we measure these things? How do we deliver these things? How are they best received? So that's kind of a broad summary of learning and development. I hope that helps. Let's see. And then I'm juggling 2 Google accounts, so bear with me. All right. So that's kind of a broad look at how I think a philosophy degree is applicable to learning and development, the tech industry, or independent contracting with tech companies. I hope this was helpful. Again, if you guys have any questions, I'm more than willing to have you reach out and chat with me. I do live in San Francisco, so not only am I one of the dreaded commuters to the South Bay, but I'm also local. So if you'd like to chat, definitely reach out, and I will pass the slides on to Leah and Audra, and they can distribute accordingly. All right. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity, and shoot me any questions that you might have. Thanks.